What's up, homeowner hagglers? Have you heard? Are you prepared to navigate the biggest change buyers and sellers have seen in the history of real estate? I'm telling you, the industry is on the brink of transformation and it's sending shockwaves through it. If you haven't heard about it or clearly understand the new guidelines, get to know them. I promise they'll reshape the way you get the best deal when you're buying or selling a home, and it'll help put you in a position to win. As of August 14th, 2024, the rules of real estate underwent a seismic shift, and we're experiencing the biggest shakeup in the history of real estate. Here's what's up. National Association of Realtors was originally founded as the National Association of Real Estate Exchanges in 1908 and actually didn't become NAR until 1972. So over the years, brokers and agents kind of adopted a commission structure with sellers that became common practice throughout the industry. And it goes a little something like this. The listing agent and the home seller would walk through the home. The agent might deliver some snoozer of a listing presentation, review the comps, they'd agree on a sales price, and then ultimately agree on the agent's commission to market and sell the home. So the listing agent would then turn around and split that commission with the buyer's agent out of the proceeds once the home is sold. Then both agents pay a piece of that to their respective brokers. This is called cooperating broker compensation. Phew. Until these recent changes, the buyer's agent share of the commission or the co-op fee was visible to agents as part of every listing in the MLS or multiple listing service. Now, some perceive this as what's called steering or influencing a buyer's home choice because cooperating compensation might be different from listing to listing. This means, whether you knew it or not, long before NAR's recent settlement agreement with the Department of Justice, real estate commissions were as negotiable as they are to this day. Now, part of the issue was that a lot of realtors fell into the habit of not clearly communicating the negotiability of agent commissions to clients. And let's face it, sometimes it's what you don't say that's as important as what you do say. And in those cases, sellers often assumed they had no choice but to pay commission rate, which coupled or included buyer agent commissions. So is coupling of commissions fair? Well, I guess that all depends on your perception and whether you're sitting on the seller side or the buyer side of the table. Keep in mind, this practice has long helped buyers overcome a huge financial hurdle, many of whom are already strapped for cash. Why? Because of down payments, closing costs, moving costs, you name it. Buyers aren't allowed to fold broker commissions into their home loans, meaning that unless lender laws change, buyers need to come up with additional cash in situations where sellers don't agree to help cover the cost. Oy. Okay, let's pop off a quick overview of the new real estate practice guidelines. They were crafted mainly with three goals in mind, okay, to control home prices, to prevent steering, and basically add transparency about the options sellers and buyers have to compensate agents. The first and easiest rule change to understand is the new requirement across the country that every buyer being represented by a buyer agent must formally engage their services through a written agreement. This is called a buyer agency agreement. And now it must be signed before touring a home, either in person or virtually. So this is a good thing for everyone because it helps make the terms of the relationship completely transparent, including disclosure of the specific amount or percentage that an agent's going to receive for their services. Just as important, it outlines the specific possible sources of payment. And this makes sense to me. In fact, clear compensation figures have been included in buyer agency agreements in lots of states for years, including mine. Now, in the past, a lot of agents opted to postpone getting a signed buyer commitment until they were ready to make a purchase. This actually left a lot of agents vulnerable to buyers who were kind of ghosting them after investing a lot of time and resources. But requiring buyers to sign a contract upfront understandably makes people feel uncomfortable, especially when you're trying to nurture a new relationship. Nonetheless, if you want to see a house in this day and age with the guidance of a buyer's agent, you need to have an agreement in place first. The second change is all about the multiple listing service, or MLS. Now, prior to August 14th, 2024, commissions offered to buyer's agents were clearly communicated in the MLS. Now, any reference to compensation specifically offered to cover those buyer agent fees is prohibited. So even if sellers want to cover those fees to help attract buyers, they can't promote this benefit in the MLS. Now, co op commissions can still be promoted through other marketing channels like flyers or emails, signs, direct communication with agents, even broker websites. But there's also a built in loophole. Most MLSs now offer a place to list what's called seller concessions, or a specific amount of money that can be used to pay for any number of costs on behalf of the buyer, like title insurance, property taxes, lender fees, inspections, attorney fees, and yes, buyer agency fees. Again, the concessions can't specifically state it'll be used for agent fees, but essentially this creates a loophole in the new rule. Now, the third and most significant industry change surrounds what's best explained as the decoupling of those commissions. Now, while still a viable option in many markets, sellers don't have to pre commit to paying a buyer agent commission up front. In essence, the new real estate rules really compel real estate agents to clearly communicate the types of compensation available for agents working with buyers. Now, these aren't the only forms of compensation, but I'm going to wrap up by sharing the main three. Okay, so let's break these down. The first is cooperating broker compensation. Buyer agents in many, though not all states, can still collect a portion of the listing broker's compensation, not unlike the longstanding practice we talked about of commission sharing between brokers. Sellers can agree that their listing agent shares a portion of commissions that are agreed upon in their listing contract. Now, in some states, coupling of commissions this way isn't an option anymore, so you got to check with your local agent before entering into a service agreement. Now, the second is concessions from the seller. Yep, these are the same category of seller concessions that we talked about being permitted in the MLS, which can be used to help cover certain transaction expenses like closing costs, repairs, and yes, fees for buyer broker services. Again, while these concessions can be used to pay buyer agents on behalf of the buyer, these concessions can't specifically say that they're payment for that agent or broker. So lastly, a percentage or fixed commission can be paid directly by buyers to the buyer's agent. Now, as a buyer, you might also find yourself in this sort of hybrid position, paying the difference between the amount agreed upon in your buyer agency agreement and the amount offered by the seller. So, what will the real impact of these changes be? Are we going to see pressure mounting on buyers to cover more and more of their own agent fees? Will this put downward pressure on home prices if sellers aren't on the hook to cover all these costs? I mean, in those cases, buyers may find sellers being more flexible in negotiations. Will this indeed, though, make homes more affordable? Of course, mortgage rates remain a huge variable, but it could take time for buyers to see enough of a price adjustment to balance the extra cost. Might a buyer's willingness to tour or make an offer on homes without concessions be affected? Very quickly, we're learning that in some markets, these impacts may not be as dramatic as you'd expect, which is good news. But how will their ability to win in a multi bid situation be affected? How will negotiations between agents and their clients change? Will more buyers turn to a no agent strategy, sort of like for sale by owners or FSBOs? Will they go directly to the listing agent and take the gamble of dual agency? My prediction is that we'll see more variations of agent compensation sort of woven into the purchase offer. It'll become another financial variable used by sellers to weigh the strength of different offers. Before we go, I want to implore you to be mindful that as sellers, we often cross over as being buyers for our next home. Is it more realistic to net a little less when you sell or save a little more when you buy? Under the old rules, many argued that the pool of money used to pay both sides of agent commissions was essentially financed through the buyer as part of the cost of the home. Now, new guidelines make that harder to do. Whatever negotiation strategy you take on, there's no defined path to making your best deal. For sellers, the most important thing is your net proceeds. And for buyers, it's about getting the best home at the best price. Now, only time's going to tell how all this shakes out, but one thing is certain, and that is things are changing. So please be sure to like this video and follow me so you stay ahead of the crazy real estate ride ahead.